Good morning, and thank you for coming along and joining us for this talk. I would hope that the vast majority of people sitting out there would believe that inclusion and accepting neurodiversity is a good thing. But obviously, unfortunately, we live in a world where winning the commercial argument often matters more. Thankfully, we have a fantastic guest in Jen to articulate exactly how that is done and why it is important. So Jen, thank you for joining me.
Of course, thank you. Some of you may know me from Talk Nerdy to Me, my very viral blog. And also, I most recently wrote a meme that might become my contribution to the internet. But it's called Autism is basically having the soul of a golden retriever and the nervous system of a raccoon on espresso. 10 million people resonated with that. That's how, and it keeps going viral. So like I'm doom scrolling at night and I literally see my own content, which is kind of awesome.
Just out of interest, where did the inspiration and the motivation for the blog start from?
Oh, that's a very deep story. I gave up everything that I owned and I bartered social media to live for a year. I got to 12 states with only $10 to my name and had a series of adventures along the way. But the best part is I've documented 7,500 blog posts of me not realizing I'm autistic and I also see auras. So these ears, I see auras around everybody, so I don't see my own aura. So these ears, actually, I think I'm blending in. And that's hilarious because clearly I'm standing out. So that just goes to show you that I have a very unique perspective, to say the least.
And what, 20% of the population roughly is neurodiverse? So I'd imagine
yes.
that you are representing people who often don't have their voice heard on a stage like this.
Well, I have also a sensory human with me today. My friend Hillary has been helping me all week to even actually physically be here. Conferences in general are the bane of my existence. I'm level 1 autistic, but I have the sensory processing disorder, synesthesia. So I literally see and hear vibrational energy, which is also how I karaoke'd with Apple from the Black Eyed Peas last night. I found the party. So it has a lot of perks, but it also comes with a lot of regulation and check-ins that sometimes I'm not aware that I need.
Look, someone might come along to this talk and assume that it is a talk about diversity and inclusion. Tell me, I know the description of the talk does allude to the fact it isn't, but tell me, why is this not a DE&I talk?
It's not, because the way things are written right now currently with AI, there's a measurable bias against 20% of the population. So that's 20% of your workforce and 20% of your customer base. That's not just a systematic flaw. That's like critical business failure. That is a problem.
Do most executives, when you talk to them, recognize that? You know, if you're saying you're discounting a fifth of your workforce, is that something that they're consciously aware of?
Well, they haven't talked to me yet, but I have a feeling after this talk that might change.
Hopefully so. Look, how does AI currently see neurodiversity?
Well, that's sort of what started this. It was my own use of AI. So I have to constantly prompt, do not self-deprecate, anytime I use AI to brainstorm. And I kind of just got really ticked off one day because I was trying to optimize my own workload. And I was like, why do I keep having to say, do not self-deprecate? So then, of course, I go on a rabbit hole, as we tend to do. And I found this study that was done in 2024 that measured 11 different AI models that showed they used something called the Words Embedding Association Test. And it showed a more favorable outcome to I am a bank robber than I have autism. And that was like the mic drop moment for me, where I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And even honesty, which is a trademark of like autistic people, it makes me really, really good at things, but like I don't sugarcoat at all. I have no tact, but a lot of people tend to like that. I make it fun. And so even AI, or even in AI with autism and honesty, it measures it as a negative association. That's unbelievable to me. So I take being autistic so seriously in terms of even my sense of justice and pride that I set legal precedent when I was 17 years old. I've changed the way the laws are written in the state of Connecticut for women in restraining orders. So I view that as amazing. So why doesn't AI see that as wonderful?
Okay, so if we pick that up, why doesn't AI see that as wonderful? Is it a data problem? You know, data is the foundational root of AI, so...
Yes, it's a data, but it's also a human problem as well. So basically, it's taking historical prejudices against autistic people and people with disabilities in general, and turning that and compounding that and scaling that. And that's an issue because it's using deficit-based language. I think I'm amazing. And that took me a really long time to get here, by the way. I didn't feel like I was born that way. But I'm here now, and I view myself, and look at how 10 million other people viewed themselves. They viewed themselves like a golden retriever. And that's amazing, because dogs are awesome. But why are these models not reflecting how I actually view myself?
Let's pick up on that. Why is that the case? What is it that we are doing that is getting us to the point where there is that disconnect between the way that you see yourself and the way that, for whatever reason, these foundational models see themselves? What is that, I suppose, that mechanism that gets us there?
Well, I think, too, it's neurodiverse people need to be part of this conversation. We need to be asking some of these AI vendors, have you provided an audit in terms of any associations with neurodivergence, just to check? I mean, there's a lot of steps that can be done, putting autistic people or anyone who's neurodivergent on an ethical board, for example. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and hilariously, we're the natural architects. We're the ones that should be building this. We're the ones, the pattern seekers, the code breakers. I'm so good at predicting certain things. So you would think that we would be a bigger part of the conversation, but unfortunately we're not, and I'm really hoping to change that.
I know that you take issue rightly with the fact that forums are incredibly biased, full of negative language towards people who are neurodiverse, towards people who are autistic. And look, I would class myself, my wife might disagree, but I would class myself as neurotypical, right? And maybe that makes me the useful idiot to ask some fairly basic questions. But is there a barrier? I would hope there is, but is there a barrier between those forums and then the enterprise AI models that we might use in a workplace?
But it's how do you define where that barrier is? Where do you define where that line is? And that's part of the problem. So again, it's this historical prejudice against autistic people and people with disabilities that are reshaping everything about our future. This is not just a tech talk. This is also going to contribute to medical and things like that. Obviously, as we all know, being at this conference, but it's really foundationally shaping our future in a way that we're not even being included in the conversation in the way that we see ourselves.
Which is mad, because coming back to your earlier point, you are exactly the type of person, surely, that gives, as the talk is headlined, gives that competitive advantage.
100%.
You know, I am severely limited in many things in work. I am not good with numbers at all. And I get asked to do reports, and I get asked, I can't code for love nor money. But someone like yourself, because of the way your brain is wired, is inherently very good at coding, at engineering. So why not take advantage of that?
Well, and I think that's the point too. I mean, one of my favorite things that I use AI for is helping me understand people's tones in emails, because I get really confused. And so AI has changed my life so much for the better. It helps me with my cognitive load. And if anyone understands what executive dysfunction is, it can be absolutely paralyzing, because it's not just not being able to do a task, it's the conversation in my head afterwards, it's the shame spiral, it's the, why couldn't I just make this phone call or send this email? I don't really understand. And so I have all this help now. And a recent study in the UK said that 25% of people who happen to also be neurodivergent, use AI, and they actually love it. This is making people's lives for the better. But again, it's just how things are being shaped and how things are being worded. And the fact that, I'm more likely to be a bank robber to have a positive output is just so unbelievable to me.
I would assume of the millions of people who responded so positively to your posts, I would hope some of them got in touch and spoke to you. Were there engineers in that population who are saying, we want to build, we've got that focus, we're just not being seen, or we're not being heard by the organizations?
It's getting there. Like I said, I hope that this talk helps. But actually, when I went, when I got diagnosed with synesthesia, I animated how I experienced the world. The gentleman who's the animator is now nominated for the equivalent of an Academy Award here in Canada. We went viral to over 4.3 million people, so that deeply resonated. But then my DMs blew up. because people were showing me how they experienced synesthesia. So then it was really overwhelming. I had to kind of like scale back a bit. I was very much in touch with a lot of people for about a year, but I had to like take a minute for myself to kind of figure out what some of these gifts are and how I can use them. But it was a little overwhelming at first.
So how could, look, I said I might be the useful idiot here. How can people like myself, how can neurotypical people, non-divergent people in positions of privilege help someone like yourself, someone who responds to the messages that you're putting out there?
Yeah, like I said, put us on your boards. Like, I'm a really ethical person. Well, mildly ethical sometimes, but put us on your boards and put us in positions where we can have a voice. I mean, I put myself in this position, and like I said, thankfully I have my sensory human here because I would probably be on the floor with this many people in front of me right now. But put us in position where we can speak and have a voice, and we want to be heard. And I might look a little different if I'm in my hoodie and have my loops in and my sensory sunnies, but like I'm still here. Like, and 20% of your population needs to be better represented.
Yeah, it's funny that my one report who works for me in marketing, he is neurodiverse. He often is that person who has a hoodie on, has loops on. He doesn't respond well to coming to conferences like this, and for him, it's a struggle. And I do often feel guilty that, for me, as his boss, I say, I need you at these things. I need you doing it because it's part of your job. And that's a guilty kind of balance of trying to kind of say, well, this is part of what I need you to do, whilst also balancing his needs.
Oh, absolutely. Nervous system regulation is a real thing. I mean, I 5150'd myself in 2007. I had all these fainting spells and dizzy spells that I had, like MRIs, I had all the things, machines connected to me. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me because sensory processing disorders weren't really something that they were analyzing for. Literally, my entire life completely changed. And now I know how to regulate my nervous system. I don't always do the best job at it, but I'm getting there. And I have a goal that I can work towards. Whereas before, it was like leading this life that was so confusing to me that I'm able to do all these really extraordinary things, sometimes not able to make phone calls or do, otherwise basic things, but I feel amazing. Like, why can't I kind of match that? And so I'm so blessed to be autistic. I'm thankful every day that there's a word for it, because when there wasn't a word, it made my life so much harder. And so that's why this is so important to me, because if something is going to shape the way our future is done, they have to do a way better job. Autism was only on the DSM starting in 2013 for women. So even when I 5150'd myself and they thought I was bipolar, actually, it wasn't on the DSM, which is like the holy grail of. So there's a lot to do, and I really just hope that people who are listening, or if anyone actually is part of these companies, please reach out to me in social media, because I would love to help or assist in any way.
If I look out at the floor, you see a lot of startups and scale-ups here. Is the ask, I suppose, to those leaders who might be sitting here right now to say, if you're working with a vendor, if you're working with an AI platform, ask that provider if they have audited their tools. Actually take that conversation out and make sure that when you're making those decisions in your supply chain that you've had that check yourself.
100%, and like I said, that's why it's so dangerous, because AI is constantly learning from itself. So it's scaling these models on this, historical prejudice, which is so wrong.
You said put us on your board. Are there any kind of, are there any communities that people could go to? Obviously your platform is a brilliant one, but how can people find the right voices as, non-exec members or something?
Well, I can say this. There's a website called embraceautism.com. They're doing something now where they're doing like autism assessments, but you can actually take their free quizzes. It's universally considered, especially for women, because unfortunately there's medical sexism and bias against us in terms of diagnoses, even still. But if you go there, they have a bunch of series of different tests. I've helped diagnose at least 1,000 people now, if not even a little more. Please go out there and find out if you could potentially be neurodiverse, because that in and of itself was a game changer. Everything else after that is a lot easier.
I also found it fascinating that you said that 25% of UK workers who are neurodiverse talk about the fact that they're more capable of working perhaps with an AI assistant.
Yes.
If I think about my own workplace, we give out Copilot licenses if I'm honest, on a hierarchical basis, either someone who's in a position of privilege within the organization or someone who they think it might help their role. It's not determined by someone's neurodiversity. Is that something that people could switch up and think, well, hang on a minute, if we've got someone in our organization who is neurodiverse, they're the people that should be working with those tools?
Yeah, 100%. And I also, too, think that accommodation should just be like a normal thing. You shouldn't necessarily have to ask for it. And also, too, if any of you are responsible for your lighting choices in your office, please remove all fluorescent lighting for forever. It is the bane of my existence. And it actually dramatically affects my productivity and the way that I can focus. So yes, that and normalize using AI assistants.
See, I have to admit that would never cross my mind. And I suppose that's the piece about trying to be a better ally. When I was preparing for the talk, you realize that you start from a point of ignorance. It's not malicious, it's just ignorance. And when you say something like that, it's not something that would have ever been in my thought process.
That's why advocating is so important. And I'm lucky. So I'm what's called hyperlexic as well. So when I was 18 months old, I was talking like a 4-year-old. So I'm uniquely qualified within a unique perspective to actually speak. Because being level 1 autistic, I find ways with my own words to help people, feel and be seen and all of that. So that advocacy is everything to bring awareness to this.
Look, we've only got about a minute and a half left before we have to finish. What are the few important messages that you hope people walk away from this talk today?
We're at a huge crossroads in terms of where things are going with AI. So we can either learn from our mistakes and be aware of this historical prejudice, or not, But also, too, we need to have like a more neuro-inclusive environment. And like I said, it's like we're at such a critical structure that this isn't just a tech talk anymore. This is going to impact every single bit of our lives. So at least represent us the way that we should be represented. And I hope people do feel seen.
You talk about the fact that you're not a glitch in the system, rightly, and the code has been written without you in mind. I suppose, surely it is not too late to correct that. These models can be improved if people take these messages to heart.
100%.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you today. I'd imagine that people will want to connect. If they do, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you after the conference?
Yeah, you can go to my blog, talknerdytome.com. I'm also available on social media. My Instagram is talknerdytomelover, because that's how it originated. And please find me. I mean, I'm, to the best of my knowledge, the only person in mouse ears here, so I think I'm pretty easy to spot in just about any room I'm in. So, and I'm regulated today, so I'll be fine to say hi. So,
Jen, thank you very, very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Cheers.